The projector in the conference room was still humming when my security badge blinked from green to red. I'm Hudson Clark, 47 years old, and I just watched 14 years of my life get stolen in under 5 minutes. Ryan Reed, the CEO's 28-year-old son, didn't even look at me when he said it, just straightened his designer tie and announced to the room like he was ordering lunch. Hudson will be transferring full ownership of Aegis Core to Pinnacle Technologies, effective immediately. Here's the thing about Aegis Core. It wasn't just software. It was quantum encryption technology that I'd built from scratch, algorithm by algorithm over 14 years. The system protecting half of our defense contracts and financial networks, worth $1.8 billion in patents alone, and now this kid was taking it like it belonged to him. Nobody said a word. Not the CFO sitting 2 chairs down. Not the legal team who'd helped me write the original contracts back in 2010. Not even my own engineering leads, whose careers I'd built from nothing over the past decade. I closed my laptop, gathered my notes, and stood up. Ryan finally looked at me then, probably expecting me to argue or beg or throw a fit. Instead, I just asked Ryan, "You sure you've read Clause 18.7, the company's chief legal counsel, same guy who'd helped me draft that clause 14 years ago when I was young and paranoid about getting screwed, suddenly found his paperwork very interesting." Ryan just stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. I nodded once, signed the termination papers, they slid across the table and walked out. But before I left the room, I stopped at the door. "Enjoy your moment," I said. "Sunrise isn't far away." You know what's funny? Ryan had no idea what I meant. None of them did. See, back in 2010, when I first joined Pinnacle Technologies, fresh out of MIT with my computer science degree, and a head full of big ideas about quantum encryption, I was 33 and hungry to change the world. The founder, Spencer Davis, and I had written some pretty specific language into my employment contract. We were both engineers back then before the company got big and corporate politics took over. Spencer understood that the best way to protect innovation was to build safeguards right into the legal framework. We called it the Mirror Vault Clause. Basically a legal failsafe that required dual authentication for any intellectual property transfer. My signature plus federal patent registry confirmation. Without both, ownership would automatically revert to the original creator, me. I'd embedded my own encryption into every contract signature field I'd ever touched. Not because I was planning anything sneaky, but because I'd seen too many brilliant engineers get screwed over by suits who didn't understand the first thing about what they were stealing. Spencer used to say, "Build it right. Protect it well." He'd learned that lesson the hard way at his previous startup where investors pushed him out after he'd created their core technology. If Pinnacle ever forgot who actually built their golden goose, the system would remember for them. The elevator ride up to my office felt longer than usual. My badge still worked on floor 22, probably because Ryan was too eager to fire me to think about access protocols. Amateur mistake number 1. My office looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Papers neatly stacked. 3 monitors still glowing with lines of code that now belonged to someone else, according to Ryan. The white lab coat hanging on my chair still had a coffee stain from last week's all-nighter debugging the latest government contract for the Navy's new submarine communication system. 14 years in this room. 14 years of skipped dinners, weekend calls, emergency fixes that started with only Hudson knows how to handle this. I'd saved Pinnacle from 4 major system collapses, written 7 patents in quantum encryption, and helped secure defense contracts that put the company on the global map. The annual revenue from my technology alone was pushing $220 million. On my desk sat a framed photo from my early days, me standing next to Spencer Davis under harsh fluorescent lights in our original lab space, both of us grinning like we just discovered fire. Spencer's tie was crooked, my hair was a mess, but his handwritten caption along the bottom was still perfectly clear. Build it right. Protect it well. Spencer had retired 5 years ago when Maxwell Reed bought him out. Smart man got out before the company turned from an engineering lab into a corporate showroom. The old guard left, the lawyers multiplied, and guys like Ryan started treating technology like a family inheritance. I packed slowly, deliberately. Rushing would have felt like defeat. The patent certificate for Aegis Core sat in its silver frame, catching afternoon light through the window. I traced my name etched beneath the official seal, feeling that quiet pride that comes from building something that actually matters. When I shut down my computer, a single line of text appeared on the screen before it went black. Clause 18.7, pre-verification pending. That night, I sat in my apartment watching city lights flicker like circuit boards. My old server tower hummed in the corner, the one I'd never connected to Pinnacle's network. Best decision I ever made, as it turned out. I opened my terminal and ran a diagnostic on the encryption seed tied to my digital signature. Everything was still there, still active. Somewhere in those algorithms was a sunrise trigger, a mechanism that would activate if anyone tried to forge my authorization without proper federal clearance. The countdown had already begun. My phone buzzed around midnight. Unknown number, Hudson. The voice was shaky, nervous. I recognized it. Someone from legal, probably calling from a burner phone. They don't know, do they? The clause is still active. It's counting down, I said, watching the timer on my screen pulse like a heartbeat. Jesus, they're planning a press conference tomorrow morning. Channel 7, Bloomberg, the whole circus. Ryan thinks the transfer went through clean. I leaned back in my chair. Then God help him. Hudson, I just want you to know some of us tried to warn them, but Maxwell shot down anyone who questioned his son. The line went dead. Let me tell you something about Ryan Reed. The kid graduated from Stanford with an MBA and immediately got handed a VP title at Daddy's company. Never wrote a single line of code. Never stayed late fixing a system crash. Never had his phone ring at 3 a.m. because a government contract was failing and only he knew how to save it. But he sure knew how to wear expensive suits and talk to investors about technological synergies and next-generation paradigms. Corporate speak for I have no idea what I'm talking about, but it sounds impressive. I'd watched him in board meetings over the past 2 years since Maxwell started grooming him for leadership. Ryan would nod knowingly when we discussed encryption protocols, throw around buzzwords like machine learning integration and blockchain scalability. But I could see the blank stare behind his confident smile whenever someone asked for technical specifics. The kid had never even been inside our secure development lab, didn't have the clearance. But somehow he thought he could just walk into a conference room and claim ownership of technology that required PhD-level mathematics to even understand. The next morning I drove to the little cafe on the ground floor of the Pinnacle building. Call it morbid curiosity, but I wanted to watch Ryan's big moment up close. The place was half empty, filled with the usual crowd of office workers grabbing overpriced coffee before another day of meetings. The TV above the counter was tuned to the local business channel, sound turned low. At exactly 9 a.m., there was Ryan on screen, standing behind a podium with the Pinnacle logo gleaming behind him. He looked every inch the confident young executive, pressed navy suit, perfect hair, that practiced smile that screams trust fund baby. Today, he announced to the cameras, Pinnacle Technologies proudly confirms that we now hold complete ownership of Aegis Core, the revolutionary quantum encryption system that will define the future of global security. The small crowd in the cafe looked up from their phones, mildly interested. Most of them probably worked in the building, knew the company's reputation. Ryan was their golden boy, the next generation of leadership. I ordered a black coffee and found a table by the window where I could see both the TV and the street outside. The bitter taste seemed appropriate. This breakthrough represents 14 years of collaborative innovation, Ryan continued, and I almost choked on my coffee. Collaborative, right? Under Pinnacle's guidance, this technology will now reach its full potential in protecting America's most critical infrastructure. The ticker at the bottom of the screen read, Pinnacle stock jumps 12% on technology acquisition news. Here's what made me angry. Not the theft itself, but the way he was selling it. Ryan was up there talking about patriotism and national security, wrapping himself in the flag while claiming credit for work that had cost me 14 years of my life. The worst part, he actually believed his own BS. You could see it in his eyes, that absolute certainty that he deserved this, that his last name made him entitled to other people's achievements. Around 10:30, my phone started buzzing with messages, former colleagues, mostly junior engineers who'd worked under me over the years. Is it true? Did you really sign over Aegis? Heard you got fired? What's the real story? Ryan's claiming he led the development team. We know that's garbage. I didn't reply to any of them. What was the point? In a few hours, the truth would speak for itself. But I did think about those engineers, good people who'd learned their craft working on my projects. Sarah Martinez, who'd started as an intern and was now leading our financial sector encryption team. Kevin Thompson, who'd figured out how to optimize our authentication protocols for mobile platforms. They knew who'd really built Aegis Core. They'd been in the trenches with me through countless debugging sessions and system upgrades. The silence from them yesterday during that conference room ambush had hurt more than I wanted to admit, but I understood it too. They had mortgages, families, careers to protect. Standing up to the CEO's son wasn't exactly a smart career move in most companies. Still, it stung. The restaurant they'd chosen for Ryan's celebration dinner was exactly what you'd expect. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, wine list longer than most people's resumes. The invitation had arrived by courier that afternoon, printed on thick paper with gold embossing, an appreciation dinner for legacy contributors to the Aegis Core project. Legacy contributors, like I was some retired consultant who'd helped out years ago. Not the guy who'd invented the whole damn thing. I wore my best suit, charcoal gray. Nothing flashy. If you're going to watch someone hang themselves with their own rope, dress appropriately. Hudson. Ryan greeted me at the door like we were old friends. So glad you could make it. After all, none of this would have been possible without your foundational contributions. He wanted that word to hurt. Foundational, like I'd laid some bricks and moved on instead of designing and building the entire structure. Appreciate the invitation, I said, shaking his hand firmly, and the acknowledgement. Both are pretty rare these days. The dinner table seated 14 people. Ryan at the head like a king holding court, his father Maxwell to his right looking proud as punch. The new legal team spread around like bodyguards protecting their investment. I recognized a few faces from the engineering department, people who'd worked directly with my technology but were now nodding along with Ryan's version of history. I took a seat near the middle, close enough to hear everything, positioned where I could see everyone's faces when the show started. The champagne was Dom Perignon, probably $300 a bottle. Maxwell stood up first, raising his glass with the practiced gesture of a man who'd made a lot of victory speeches. To the next generation, he declared, to innovation, to leadership, and to the Reed family legacy. Everyone raised their glasses. I lifted mine, but didn't drink. Figured I should stay sharp for what was coming. Ryan stood next, grinning like he'd just won the lottery, which in his mind he probably had. Tonight we celebrate more than a business acquisition, he said, voice carrying that rehearsed confidence of someone who'd practiced this speech in the mirror. We're celebrating the future. Aegis Core now belongs fully to Pinnacle Technologies, integrated into our corporate structure, ready to revolutionize how America protects its most sensitive data. He looked directly at me when he said fully belongs. The little punk was enjoying this. Integration can be tricky, I said casually, cutting into my steak. Complex systems are sensitive to ownership transfers. You just want to make sure all the proper authorizations are in place before you flip the switch. A few people around the table chuckled, thinking it was just technical shop talk. Ryan's smile flickered for half a second before he recovered. Our legal team assures me everything is properly documented, he said, but I caught the slight edge in his voice. Good, I said, taking another bite. Just make sure someone backs up the core systems before sunrise. You know how finicky quantum encryption can be during ownership transitions. The way I said it, casual, conversational, like I was reminding him to check the weather forecast, made a couple of people pause mid-chew. Maxwell Reed was watching me now, probably trying to figure out if I was making some kind of threat or just offering technical advice. Truth is, it was both. Dinner continued with the usual corporate small talk, market projections, expansion plans, industry gossip. I answered the polite questions about my transition plans with the standard responses about consulting opportunities and taking some time off. What I didn't mention was the 14 years I'd spent building safeguards into every system I'd ever touched at Pinnacle. Call it paranoia, call it professional insurance. Either way, Ryan was about to get a very expensive education in intellectual property law. I thought about Spencer Davis, probably at home in his study right now, maybe reading a book or working on one of his woodworking projects. He'd tried to warn me about the corporate types when Maxwell first started making noises about buying him out. They see technology as a commodity, he'd said, something you can trade like pork bellies or crude oil. They don't understand that real innovation comes from people, not balance sheets. Spencer had built Pinnacle from nothing back in 1995, starting with just 3 engineers in a rented office space. I joined during the company's second growth phase, when we were landing our first major government contracts. Those were good days. We worked hard, but we were building something that mattered. Every line of code had purpose. Every system we designed made the world a little bit safer. Now look at it. Boardroom politics, nepotism, and MBA graduates who couldn't debug a Hello World program if their trust funds depended on it. Halfway through dessert, a server appeared with a cream-colored envelope. Federal letterhead, official seal, The kind of mail that makes corporate executives break out in cold sweats. Urgent delivery for Mr. Ryan Reed, the kid said, looking nervous. Ryan frowned, probably wondering who'd track him down at a private dinner. He tore open the envelope, and I watched his face go from confusion to concern to something approaching panic. "What is it?" Maxwell asked. Ryan cleared his throat, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just a routine compliance check. Patent Office wants to verify some documentation," but I could see his hand shaking slightly as he folded the letter. The message was simple enough. Federal Patent Registry requires immediate verification of signature authorization for patent number US 10,847,392. Discrepancies detected in ownership transfer documentation. Response required within 24 hours. That was the beauty of Clause 18.7. It wasn't some hidden backdoor or illegal hack. It was completely legitimate legal protection that I'd built into my original employment contract, buried deep in the technical specifications that most lawyers skimmed over. The federal patent database had my biometric signature linked to every piece of Aegis Core technology. When Ryan tried to claim ownership without proper dual authentication, the system automatically flagged it for review. The bureaucratic wheels were already turning, and there was nothing Maxwell Reed's money could do to stop them. I stood up, dabbed my mouth with a cloth napkin. "Thanks for dinner, Ryan." Maxwell. It was educational. I paused at my chair, looking around the table at all these people who'd just spent 3 hours celebrating intellectual property theft. "You know what I learned tonight? Success looks different depending on where you're sitting. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day." The drive home was quiet, just me and the radio playing some old classic rock. The city looked peaceful at night, street lights reflecting off glass buildings, late commuters heading home from honest jobs. My phone rang around midnight. Maxwell Reed this time, not Ryan. "Hudson, we need to talk. I'm listening. This patent office situation, there seems to be some confusion about the documentation. Our lawyers are saying there might be issues with the transfer authorization." I pulled into my driveway, turned off the engine. "Maxwell, there's no confusion. The system is working exactly as designed." "What system? What are you talking about?" "Clause 18.7, the Mirror Vault Protocol. The legal safeguard that Spencer Davis and I built into my contract 14 years ago specifically to prevent unauthorized IP transfers." Long pause. I could almost hear him flipping through legal documents, probably calling his lawyers at midnight to figure out what the hell I was talking about. "Hudson, be reasonable. Ryan made a mistake, but he's young. We can work this out. Name your price." "This isn't about money, Maxwell." "Then what? You want your job back? A promotion? Equity stake?" I looked up at my apartment building, lights scattered across the facade like stars. "I want integrity back in the industry. I want merit to matter more than last names. I want 14 years of my work to be recognized for what it is." "You're talking about destroying the company over hurt feelings. I'm talking about enforcing the law. The same law your son ignored when he decided to steal my life's work." Maxwell's voice got harder. "You do realize Ryan's announcement has already moved the stock price. Investors are committed based on our ownership of Aegis Core. If you pull some legal stunt now, you'll wipe out millions in market value. Then you should have thought about that before you let your boy play with patents that didn't belong to him." I hung up and went inside. The next few hours were the longest of my life. Not because I was nervous, the legal framework was solid, the technology was foolproof, and the federal database doesn't lie. But because I was about to watch 14 years of relationships and history get reduced to lawsuit documents and SEC filings. At 4:30 a.m., I was already awake, coffee brewing, watching the first hint of dawn creep across the skyline. My laptop showed system diagnostics running in real time, minus of encryption seeds synchronizing with federal databases, authentication protocols verifying digital signatures. The Mirror Vault was fully activated now. Every Pinnacle system connected to Aegis Core was pinging the Federal Registry, asking for confirmation that Ryan Reed had authority to access Hudson Clark's intellectual property. The answer, of course, was no at exactly 5:45 a.m. As the sun cleared the horizon and painted the Pinnacle building golden, every light in the tower began to flicker. Not a power surge, something much more systematic. It was sequence activation. The Sunrise Protocol Spencer Davis and I had designed as the ultimate failsafe, triggered only when someone tried to steal patented technology without proper authorization. I finished my coffee and got dressed. Time to watch justice work the way it was supposed to. Inside the Pinnacle Tower, Ryan was probably standing in the main conference room getting ready for another press briefing, maybe practicing his victory speech, talking about how Pinnacle Technologies was now the undisputed leader in quantum encryption technology. Then the screens went dark. Every monitor in the building flashed white, then displayed the same message in bold black letters: license revoked. Federal Registry override activated. Authorized owner, H. Clark. I didn't need to be there to know what happened next. 14 years of Ryan's collaborative innovation vanished in about 60 seconds. Every system, every contract, every piece of technology tied to my patents automatically locked down pending federal review. The ripple effect moved faster than any human could react. Domestic banking networks first, the ones using Pinnacle's encryption for wire transfers, then international financial systems, then the defense contracts that Ryan had been bragging about on national television. Within 10 minutes, every major institution using Aegis Core technology received the same automated message: service suspended pending ownership verification. Contact Federal Patent Office for details. My phone started ringing around 6:15 a.m. Maxwell again, but this time his voice was pure panic. Hudson, what did you do? The stock is crashing. Everything's frozen. The FBI just called asking about securities fraud. I was sitting on my balcony watching the sunrise paint the city gold. Beautiful morning, really. Maxwell, I didn't do anything. The system did exactly what it was designed to do. This is insane. You're destroying the company over a paperwork error. Paperwork error? I laughed, couldn't help myself. Maxwell, your son went on national television claiming he invented technology that belongs to me. That's not paperwork. That's fraud. Hudson, please. We can fix this. Whatever you want. Money, position, public credit. Just unlock the systems. I finished my coffee, watched a news helicopter circling the Pinnacle building in the distance. You can't unlock what was never yours to begin with. By noon, the headlines were everywhere. Tech giant collapses after patent dispute. Pinnacle stock drops 54% in opening hour. FBI investigating possible securities fraud. The corrected stock drop was still devastating, but more realistic than the initial panic selling. The footage was almost surreal. Investors gathered outside Pinnacle headquarters, clutching their phones, watching their portfolios evaporate in real time. Ryan getting escorted to a black SUV by federal agents, no longer looking like the confident young executive from yesterday's press conference. Maxwell announced his resignation by 2 p.m. health reasons, according to the official statement, though everyone knew what that meant. The board was throwing him under the bus to avoid criminal charges. I spent the afternoon fielding calls from reporters, patent lawyers, and former colleagues who suddenly remembered my phone number. Most of them wanted to know if I was planning to restart Pinnacle under new management. No, I told them all. Pinnacle is finished, but Hudson Clark isn't. 8 months later, I was sitting in a much different kind of conference room. Glass walls overlooking downtown Austin, but smaller, cleaner, more honest than anything at Pinnacle. The nameplate on the door read Clark Defense Systems. Garrett Reynolds sat across from me, the junior engineer who'd followed me out of Pinnacle when everything collapsed. Kid had real talent, just needed someone to believe in him the way Spencer Davis had believed in me. The Department of Defense contract came through, Garrett said, sliding a folder across the table. $1.8 billion over 7 years. They want the next generation of Aegis technology for the new satellite defense network. I opened the folder, scanned the numbers. It was exactly what I'd been hoping for, recognition that the technology belonged to its creator, not the corporation that tried to steal it. What about the team? I asked. Sarah Martinez wants to join us. Kevin Thompson, too. Half the engineering department has already put in applications. Word's gotten around about how we do business here. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city below. Somewhere in that skyline, the old Pinnacle building sat empty for lease signs in the windows. Ryan was working at his uncle's insurance company in Phoenix, probably learning what it felt like to earn a paycheck instead of inherit one. Maxwell had retired to Florida, keeping a low profile while the SEC finished their investigation. My computer chimed with a new email. Subject line, Federal Innovation Award, Lifetime Achievement Recognition. The message was from the Patent Office, officially recognizing my contributions to national security technology. 14 years after I'd started building Aegis Core in a cramped lab at Pinnacle, The federal government was finally acknowledging who actually deserved the credit. I forwarded the email to Spencer Davis with a simple note. Built it right, protected it well. His reply came back 5 minutes later. Proud of you, kid. Justice took its time, but it got there. Looking back now, the whole thing wasn't really about revenge. It was about truth, about making sure the people who create things get credit for creating them, about proving that integrity and patience can beat arrogance and entitlement even when the deck seems stacked against you. Sometimes justice doesn't come with sirens and handcuffs. Sometimes it comes quietly, like the sunrise, changing everything without making a sound. And sometimes, if you build your safeguards right and wait for the perfect moment, the truth protects itself. I learned that the most powerful revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so successful that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. When you create value that can't be stolen, you win not just the battle but the war. The real victory wasn't watching Pinnacle fall or seeing Ryan get arrested. It was proving that in a world obsessed with shortcuts and connections, there's still a place for people who do the work, pay their dues, and build things that matter. They say patience is a virtue, but I think it's more than that. Patience is strategy. It's the difference between reacting to what happens to you and controlling what happens next. Sometimes the best move is the one you make 14 years in advance. Success isn't just about what you build, it's about how you protect it. The smartest engineers don't just solve today's problems, they anticipate tomorrow's betrayals. Trust the process, but verify everything.